Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at the American Tactical Omni Hybrid MAXX, which is probably the world's first functional polymer upper and lower receiver rifle. Now, we have a lot of story time to go along with this because I have a lot of involvement with this rifle. The first video I did on this was, probably 2-3 years ago. It was one of our first videos. I had some comments that came down there about guys saying how the upper receivers had broke between 600 rounds, 900 rounds. Generally, they would break right up at the area right in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about my involvement with this rifle because this is a company I worked with. I've worked with them on the development of this rifle over the last, I'd say 5 years. So let's go back in time to probably 5 years ago or so, which is when the rifle was first being developed. Now, American Tactical was originally part of Amchar Wholesale. Amchar Wholesale is in my hometown in Rochester, New York. The way the little story goes here is Tony DiCerio, which is the president of both Amchar and American Tactical, he was a retired fireman from the city of Rochester, and he opened up a gun shop called American Sportsman. Now, that was one of the first real professional gun shops in Rochester going way back into the 70s. Now, my father, actually, right around the time of my birthday, my dad went there with Tony, and he bought his Python that he has, which I have now. It's a 6-inch nickel Python. So Tony decided he wanted to get out of the retail business, and he wanted to get into the wholesale business. So he had sold the American Sportsman to Fred Calcagno, which is a very close friend of mine, and that was also the shop that I worked at early days in college. And he went on to build Amchar Wholesale. And probably from the early 70s to, I would say, the early 2000s, Amchar grew to be one of the largest law enforcement distributors in the country. They went from a very small little hole in the ground in near Main Street in Rochester, New York, to a very large facility out by the airport, Monroe County Airport. As time went on, they decided they wanted to get into American Tactical, which is basically originally designed for imports. They imported a lot of stuff from Germany and so forth. And they decided they wanted to take on a task that several companies have tried, and that was to make a polymer upper and lower receiver. Now, at that time, you pretty much had the Carbon 15 that was out there, and those had significant problems that Bushmaster had. I can remember breaking one myself. We had one in the Crown that I worked at. It was not a very durable design whatsoever. So one of American Tactical's first attempts at it was a polymer lower receiver, their original lower receiver. Now, the original lower receiver was typical what you saw from polymer receivers. It was junk. They broke. You couldn't even torque down your barrel nut to mil spec on it without snapping off the rear of the receiver. They had issues with them cracking and so forth. So Amchar decided we're going to do this. We're going to do it right. They did a whole new redesign, and what came out is what you see here is the Omni hybrid lower receiver. Now, also at that time, they had contacted me. I had worked with them through the gun shops I worked at and through Laser MAXX. We bought stuff from them and so forth. So there was a long-standing relationship. And they asked me to come in and take a look. So we looked at it. We made some changes to the original ones. And the most important thing was a whole new type of polymer, a whole new mold, whole new differences in the way the stress points were and the way that they were taken care of. And most importantly, to take care of the rear, they added a steel insert. And once that steel insert was in there, this enabled you to be able to torque the barrel nuts down to the 35 foot-pounds. And then you could stake your rear extension nut and so forth. And it was an incredibly durable design. So much so that over the last 5 or 6 years, as I've been working with these guys doing development work with them, one of these lower receivers has had over 20,000 rounds through it, just the lower receiver itself, with no wear whatsoever. So at this time, I could say that this lower receiver is as strong as any aluminum receiver. Now, what is the benefit of the polymer over the aluminum? Well, in the lower receiver, the polymer is not necessarily lighter. It does disperse heat a lot better, due to the fact that it is polymer. It's not an insulator like aluminum is. It's like an insulator. It's unlike aluminum, so you don't get the heat on it. Lightweight, doesn't get cold. It's much easier to use in a colder environment. But lower receivers I think they're comparable to any aluminum one that's out there. This rifle has gone through many, many iterations and changes. One thing about American Tactical is they're constantly improving their rifles. As they find problems, they continuously go after them and try to make this rifle better, even better. I think eventually they want this gun to be useful in the law enforcement market. And that's what their goal is right now. And they're doing a very good job at getting to that point, in my opinion. So the most recent lower receiver modification was they've added a steel insert to the front as well to even make the front stronger. I had not really seen any failures in this area here, but it was something that they had felt they wanted to do to improve it. So, I can say personally from, firing well over 20,000 rounds out of one and many thousand rounds out of some other ones that I've never ever had a failure with with that lower receiver. And we're probably talking well over 75 to 100,000 rounds that we probably put through these things over the last 6 years to get these things to where they needed to be. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the upper receiver. The upper receiver in this rifle was the most complex part. The complexity had a lot to do with, first of all, the friction that goes inside of there, and also with the torque. The torque point on this was on the front right here where the locking tab goes into the lower receiver. And this is where a lot of our challenges were. Some of the original modifications that were made was due on the charging handle. The latch area on here on the original rifles was relatively narrow. I recommended them to do was to make that a much deeper notch so the charging handle would not pop back once the springs got worn or once that polymer got worn off. So that was one of the changes that was done. The next area where a lot of the time was spent on was the upper receiver. We go back to the original rifles. We did have a life cycle that was anywhere between 300 to 600 rounds. Most of the rifles that I tested with every little iteration, we're up to about 7 generations on this now. Every change that was done, it got better. A lot of the learning curve had to do with knowing what materials to make this insert in the front out of. So we had a couple major changes that went through. First off, with the receiver, we had several of them break at various intervals, and I would say the version 6 is what we had. I got to about 1,500 rounds before I had a failure. And then the final version, which we have on here, this upper receiver has gone through a U.S. mil-spec test, which means it's gone through 6,000 rounds. We have not done much on full automatic with it yet, but that's something that's going to be coming down the pike to do a lot of full auto testing with it as well. But myself personally, in the testing that I did for American Tactical, I put 6,000 rounds through this. The gun was ran pretty hard. We probably were talking about 250 rounds before we even bother letting it cool down. But we got through the entire 6,000 rounds without any failures whatsoever. So I was very, very pleased with that. So we haven't gone further than that yet, but we can definitely say that it makes a U.S. mil-spec test with the current iteration. We're going to take this apart and we're going to take a look at this in a minute or two here. So we're talking about some other changes that went through. There's a couple different versions that were offered. They had a fixed front sight, like our standard A2 rifle, where you had drilled and pinned front sight base. But most of them had a slide-on gas block it was held on by 2 screws. That was a problematic issue that I had seen with many manufacturers, not just American Tactical, but many, many. And those of you guys who watch my videos, you know that one of my biggest pet peeves are front sight bases that are not drilled and pinned. Well, I had on several occasions with the early rifles where I would be shooting and all of a sudden I'd start getting short stroking. And I could actually see the gap in between the barrel and the gas block where it migrated forward. So I told Tony there, I said, you guys got to do something for as far as getting this secure. I highly recommend you drill and pin them. Which I'm very happy to say that I see now that American Tactical drills and pins every front sight base. For a rifle that's around a $600 or $450 or so, depending on where you get the gun at, price point, to have a rifle that has a drilled and pinned front sight base is a pretty big deal. And since we had that drilled and pinned, this problem has gone away. We have never had any issues at all with the gas getting cut off because of that problem. Another issue that we ran into was with the gas tubes. Many people don't realize that you do have mil-spec parts and you have commercial parts. And the mil-spec parts have to be spec'd out to handle high volumes of fully automatic fire. So what that means is the material's got to be able to take that heat. Now, a lot of the commercial grade gas blocks, when they're not designed, or they're rejects or whatever, and they generally don't get hot enough where they're going to be a problem. But when you start doing the kind of testing that I did with the high round counts, you did see where the metal did change, and I did break a couple of these gas tubes. They fractured right where the pin is in the front here. So I got with American Tactical again. I said, I think you need to find out who your vendors are for your gas tubes, and we need to improve those, which they did. They went, and now they have a very good high-quality mil-spec gas tube, which got rid of that problem. So as of the rifles are right now, they're very, very different from the original rifles. It's gone through a very extensive research and development and testing phase. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about American Tactical, too. American Tactical is very much a company that's dedicated to making sure, regardless of your income, that you have the ability to defend yourself or to own a firearm. A lot of the weapons that they sell are lower price points, not lower quality, but they're lower price points so people can afford them. For instance, you're looking at a rifle here for around $500, where your average, AR-15, the lowest grade is going to be around the $700 mark, $700 to $800. So they manufacture ones that are more conducive to people's, with lower income. They've done a lot of different versions of these rifles as well. You're going to be seeing a video coming up on their 450 Bushmaster pistol and rifle. You'll see this has been adapted to the 410 bore shotgun. You'll see we have pistols in this version as well. You'll see that there's a lot of different variations, and they're still coming out with quite a bit too. But looking at some of the changes that have been done as well, there's been a few different stocks that have been used. Right now, we're pretty much seeing a lot of the Roger stocks on here. We have a commercial grade, the commercial version of the receiver extension with a standard buffer. We have a ambidextrous receiver extension end plate that's used for the hook style type slings. Standard A2 grip. This particular model has a standard mil-spec parts kit for as far as the bolt catch, the safety, hammer trigger, and so forth. Now, the way the lower receiver is made, as you can see right here, you'll see screws. What this is an anti-walk system. So because they're using a little bit thicker polymer, you insert the hammer and trigger pins, you have screws to go on each side that screw into the polymer, and that absolutely prevents any possibility of the hammer and trigger pins walking out, regardless of whether the J-pin breaks or one of the hammer springs break. So that's also a reliability enhancement that was done on here. As you can see, we have a oversized trigger guard for using gloved hands, very beveled magazine well. I can also say about the magazine interchangeability. During my testing with this lower receiver over the last 5 or 6 years, in my reference collection here, I have pretty much every magazine that's been developed and put to market. So there are literally 20, 30 different, I don't even know how many there are anymore, but I basically have put every magazine that I have in my inventory through here, and I've never had any malfunctions whatsoever. It's taken every one of them. They've never been tight. They've always dropped free. The polymer seems to be a little on the oversized, so it will take anything. The only issue that I'd ever had was with the X Products 50-round drum, and that was once the magazine was seated and hitting the bolt release, the bolt wouldn't go forward. There was some kind of a tolerance issue between this rifle and that magazine. I've had it with several lower receivers with the X Products drum, but like the Magpul D60, everything had worked fine in it. So we definitely have no issues with interchangeability of magazines. So looking in the front and the top, we're going to be looking at the bolt carrier group. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to take this thing apart, look at the inside of it. Taking a look at the inside of the Omni lower receiver, what we can see here is a steel insert. That steel insert goes all the way through to here. And what this does enables you to torque your receiver extension nut to the mil-spec 35 foot-pounds, as well as to have it staked, which is the way they come from the factory. Now, there's one generation ahead of this one, and that difference is noted up in this area here. This one here, the front area here is polymer. There's a steel insert in the front here on the newer ones. So you have a steel insert on the front as well. Again, this particular low receiver has had well over 20,000 rounds through it without a single issue. So, this one, I never saw this being an issue, but as I said, American Tactical, they are very proactive. If they see any issues whatsoever, they do address them. But as I said, there is one version ahead of this one that has a insert here. You can certainly see we have a thicker polymer here than the standard aluminum. So the weight difference is not much at all. But we do have the issue for as far as heat. This definitely does a lot better job of dissipating heat than even aluminum does. If you look at the way standard steel handles heat versus aluminum handles it much better than steel. Polymer handles it even better than aluminum does. Now looking at the upper receiver. The bolt carrier that comes with the Omni hybrids and all the American Tactical rifles. The bolt carrier group is a standard mil-spec bolt carrier group. It's got a nitride coating on it. The bolt is also fired with a proof cartridge, and then it's magnetic particle inspected as well to ensure high quality. You have a properly staked carrier key as well. Now we're looking at the upper receiver. Now we're going to see where you have the steel inserts. This is also part of where the barrel goes into the upper receiver, so it's a metal on metal. It's not metal on plastic for as far as the threads are concerned. But this is the issue here that took us a while to figure out, was the proper material to be utilized right here. When this thing would fail, this would shear right off. And that took us, this is our 7th generation right here. This is the one that completed the mil-spec 6,000 round test. So those of you who've had experiences with these, with the prior generations, the new generation is extremely different. It has changed quite a bit. You also see in the back here we have a steel insert in the rear. And if you are able to see, you'll see how far back the metal insert goes. Now, some of the other benefits of having a polymer receiver is the lubricity. If you look at the lubricity that's inside of the upper receiver, when the bulk air is going back and forth, you have far less friction than you would with aluminum. So that's also a benefit of that polymer. You can see we have the ejection port dust cover, we do have the fire cartridge case deflector, and we do have the forward assist as well. Now, this particular handguard is a 9-inch handguard. It's free-floating, so you have a full free-floating barrel. The barrel, this is a 1 1/8-inch twist. It's chrome vanadium. It's nitride coated for long use. The barrels are very good quality. We're going to have some range footage just to show us shooting the thing. For as far as accuracy is concerned, it was no different than any other AR that you have out there. You're looking at probably 2.5 inches at 100 yards with good ammunition. With a 1 8, it gives you that perfect area between the 1 7 and 1 9. It's a very good barrel. You'll see it's a government profile barrel too. You do have the step for the installation of a grenade launcher. This is held on by 6 screws. And this one's key mod. I would expect to see them coming out with MAXX in the not too distant future, since that's the way the industry is going. But they've also had these the 1913 rails. As the industry has evolved from 1913 rail to key mod to MAXX, American Tactical's done the same thing. I don't know if you're going to be able to see in here, but you can see where it's been drilled and pinned. So this will not come loose and cause you failures to extract, inject, and have no short stroking whatsoever. But as you can see, it's very, very well made. These things take less than a minute or two to manufacture. The manufacturing time on these things is really, really incredible for as far as how long. So for reassembly, there's no notch in here, so this slides straight in. Unlock position. All there is to it. Now, the magazines that have been chosen are the Amend 2 magazines. American Tactical has done a lot of testing on magazines in-house, and they had found that they actually like these even better than the P-Mags. I'm not going to go as far as saying that, but I'm going to say I've not had any issues with the Amend 2 magazines whatsoever. So they come with one of those. In fact, a lot of times you'll now see American Tactical branding on the magazine as well. As I previously stated, I have tested a ton of different magazines in this rifle, and it is not choosy whatsoever, other than that X Products magazine. That's the only one I've tested that had any issues with. The optic I got on here, I just received last week from SIG. It's the Bravo 3. It's a 3x24. It's a lot nicer than the Bravo 4, which was a lot larger. It was a little more awkward. I actually would have liked to have seen this to be a 4x24, but they went with 3. You do have an illuminated reticle on here, red dot. You do have 1913 rails that go all the way around if you want to put a close range red dot on there as well, held on by 2 locking bolts. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the range. We're going to see how it shoots.
Go ahead.
Well, this rifle here, I've had about 400 rounds through since I received it last week. Not a single malfunction with any of the magazines that were used in it, which is what I expect. It's what I've seen with the ones in the past. The ammunition that I used to test the rifle was manufactured by Black Hills. I had a 223 55 grain full metal jacket. I had some of the SIG 55 grain full metal jacket, and I had some of the Remington UMC 55 grain full metal jacket, and it had no issue with any of the ammunition. It used all of it. And those of you who had earlier versions with these and had some negative experiences, I definitely would say give the rifle another chance. The rifle's changed drastically over these intervening years, and it will continue to. Even though we're to the point now where we've gotten through a 6,000 round endurance test with it, I'm sure it's going to go further. As I said, I have a very close relationship with this company. I've written armor's manuals on this for them. I helped them with their assembly line for this. I've had a very close relationship with Tony and Rob over there for a long time, and I do plan on remaining involved with this project, as well as other ones that they have coming through. They have some really exciting stuff coming out. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better, share. Thank you.